Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this new installment of Truth Noir. We wanted to talk today about some things that have left the public eye as soon as they entered it, pretty much. We're talking about the Yellow Vest protests, which started in France, spread to other countries, and somehow not being covered by the media, even though they're still going on, and it is still this massive movement. Also, we're going to talk about the presidential crisis in Venezuela, and to help me do that today, we have none other than our current political critic, activist, correspondent, journalist, and friend of the show, Mr. Dan Niswander. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me again.
It's always a pleasure, man. We were talking about this on your show a few weeks ago, and so yeah, we'll probably be rehashing a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have these big people's movements. And not unlike the Occupy movement, which happened, about 10 years ago?
Well, it was, 7.5?
Something like that.
7.5 years ago. Yeah.
And was a massive deal that started in a place and spread across the country and around the world. Somehow not a whiff of it on the news after a while.
Yeah, I mean, it literally started, Occupy started in like the middle of September, and even into October, around the world, it had like an approval rating, something like 80%, something.
Yeah, it was massive.
Maybe 85, and within a very short period of time, within a few weeks, it went down to like, I don't know, 30, 40 or less. Obviously, a really good propaganda campaign, which was pretty complex. A book could be written about it, because you can't just describe what happened in just a few minutes. You really have to have a more detailed explanation of it. But there was no doubt in my mind it was propaganda.
Well, and you also have, I guess they call them agent provocateurs.
Oh, yeah.
The people that go into an otherwise peaceful place, usually police officers or some kind of paramilitary, and they'll go in there and they'll start getting rowdy.
Right.
Or they'll start riling up the crowd so that there is an excuse for a big movement of the authorities into the area. But yeah, I mean, propaganda and just and lack of coverage, I think, is what kills these things quickly. Not that they're not still going on, but if you don't cover it here, people over here will not probably start donning their yellow vests and protest the government nearly as much.
Well, there's even activists that think that it's the yellow vest is waning. Activists that would ordinarily be supporting it.
Yeah.
So that's how well the propaganda can work, which is something that we really should red flag, because who was it? I can't remember if it was Chris Hedges or who said that the dictators or of the 20th century, like the Hitlers, the Mussolinis, Stalins, they would be in awe of how effective the propaganda is right now. Yeah,
I mean, you can't.
And they were pretty good at it.
Well, I think they wrote the handbook.
Yeah.
And then the dictators of today wrote the appendices.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. They did the masterclass lectures.
The masterclass lectures, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so let's talk about the yellow vest. How did this start? Why did it start? Like, what was the catalyst? Because there's always something, right, that gets a huge group of people wearing funny clothes and throwing batteries at their public officials.
Well, first of all, everybody has to have a yellow vest in their car, right? I don't know why that's. I guess it's French law. I don't know.
There's some kind of safety thing.
Some kind of safety thing. Yeah, I mean, we see it here.
Yeah.
We see it everywhere. I mean, safety workers, construction workers, city workers.
But over there, it's every citizen.
Everyone that has a car or a vehicle,
Yeah.
So Macron was elected president, a year and a half before, November of last year, when the first Yellow Vest protest started. and he really wasn't all that popular. I mean, there was similar kind of thing was happening here, you know, in our elections in 2016. You know, really there were there was a very low turnout. Maybe half of the eligible voters turned out.
Right.
And it was the same thing in France. So, and he got a majority, but certainly not a major mandate. You know, just like here.
Well, and then that was the majority of
the people that turned out to vote.
Who turned out to vote,
Right.
which was less than, so.
But it was no landslide of a small turnout either.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So, from what I understand, Le Pen was not that far behind, and Mélenchon was third.
Okay.
So the right almost won too in France. So anyway, every policy though, and he's a neoliberal, like, you know, Hillary Clinton, like, you know, Tony Blair, you know, and just, you know, Angela Merkel,
Right.
neoliberal, you know, and every single thing passed into law really favored the rich. And the trigger event was the rising price on the diesel fuel. And then somebody just, you know, called out, you know, say, hey, let's grab your yellow vest and let's go to the Champs-Élysées, let's start protesting. And that's what happened. And when they went out that day, which was November 18th, 2018, they had no idea there were going to be thousands upon thousands
Right,
of people
and
there.
Well, I mean, that's no small turnout either,
No,
you know.
then that's not the first day in that picture right there. That's, you know, that's on the Seine River.
Yeah.
People decided, you know, and this is what they did when they went to work, right? We're not going to pay the gas for our vehicles, so we're just going to get on the Seine River and go to work.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of that. That's what that kind of represents.
Well, yeah, and there's really no reason for diesel fuel to cost that much. Like, it's like.
Isn't it high enough as it is? I mean.
Well, yeah, but I mean, in general, like, diesel is the sludge that's left over after your distillation of petroleum. Like, there's a reason why kerosene and jet fuel are a little bit pricier. They have to go through a more rigorous refining process. Diesel is, I mean, I could be mistaken, but it seems like that is a much more raw product.
I'm not real sure. I'm not up on my oil. I do know there is a thicker oil, like, you know, the Cook brothers. Their business is like they like the thicker oil because I guess they can make more money off of it or something. I don't know. But that's, I mean, texture. I don't really understand how all that works. You know,
yeah, but
unleaded and unleaded. What does that really mean?
Well, I don't think they put lead in the fuel anymore.
Yeah.
They're not allowed. But I mean, diesel is what commerce runs on. Like, that's what your locomotives, your freight haulers,
semi trucks,
all of that.
Yeah.
And that's what hauls tons and tons and thousands and millions of tons of freight all over the country.
Right.
And so if you jump the price on that, like, that's going to trickle up as far as, like, the cost of other goods that need to be transported.
Well, the bottom line is that people realized when they got out on the streets that it was really about wealth inequality.
Yeah.
Wealth inequality, because, you know, they couldn't really afford, you know, some people had to turn their heaters down at night even though it was cold. It was just getting too expensive. And I saw some stories of people being interviewed saying by the 20th of the month they don't have enough money for food for their kids. So, you know.
And this is the Liberal Party doing this, right?
Well, neoliberal, which is supposedly people are confused about what these things mean anymore. I mean, you know, and that's why you're
seeing. It gets complicated.
It is complicated, and that's why you see a lot of unfavorability now. I mean, you know, Hillary Clinton was almost as unfavorable as Donald Trump in the last election. Now, I saw hundreds probably of polls because I was concerned. And and Hillary Clinton was not that much above Donald Trump in unfavorability, under 50%. Under 50%. So and she is a self-proclaimed neoliberal, right? And, you know, we saw Nancy Pelosi tell a socialist kid from California that we're all capitalists. So proudly.
Did you see the Green New Deal kids that went to talk to Feinstein?
Oh my God. I was really.
I'm sure it's all over YouTube and I forget where
it
first appeared, but a bunch of bunch of bright-eyed kids that wanted to go address their elected representatives about the Green New Deal that they were enthusiastic about. She basically told them to go kick rocks, and that, well, you're little kids and you actually didn't vote for me, so I don't care what you think.
I couldn't believe
Were
it.
almost her exact words.
She said, how old are you? Like, well, you didn't vote for me. And I heard that and I'm like, what? How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you?
Like, that is a shitty thing to say to a little kid.
And the Green New Deal actually, was originally created in 2007 by a coalition of people, including the Green Party. And what Ocasio-Cortez and her team has created is a resolution. So it's not a bill. It's a 14-page resolution with some great ideas in it, but it does not come anywhere close to the original Green New Deal idea.
Right.
But what's great about it is that we're pushing it forward, but the people got to get behind it, just like the people got to get behind Medicare for all. They got to get behind all these different things. See, and that's why really the Yellow Vest is about really the realization that the people don't have the power. So people don't understand too, how many people understand that democracy comes from a couple Greek words that translates basically to power to the people, right? And we have that power if we just use it.
Yeah, if we realize that we have it.
First of all, we have to realize it.
Yeah.
But in Europe, they actually have it into their constitutions that you can use referendums. You get a certain percentage of people voting on an issue, and then they come out to vote. And that...
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I mean, like, this is probably like a half mile back from the Arc.
At least.
Filled with people.
Yeah, that's the Arc de Triomphe. That's the Champs-Élysées. Yeah, that's kind of where it started right there. Like I say, it's in over 4 months now.
Yeah.
So, and earlier in the month of March, the biggest labor organization partnered with the Yellow Vests.
Really?
So, yeah.
Good for them.
That happened. So, and of course, it's, a media blackout for the most part.
Yeah, because who knew this was still going on?
Right.
Like, it's been going on the entire time. People like to say the French are a bunch of cowards, and that the moment they're born, they learn how to say "I surrender" in like 5 different languages or whatever.
Well, I personally think.
But we don't demonstrate like this here.
Not yet.
Any time something like this begins to happen, the French people take to the streets and shut it down.
That's right.
Try to, at least.
That's right.
And so, good job, France.
Thank you, France.
Yeah.
Because we need that in this country. We need people in the streets. And what I was going to say about the referendum process is that that's actually a way that people can bring up issues and get a national vote. And
Without
as long
having
as you
to wait for the election cycle.
That's right. And you can already make a statement to your government and make them accountable. Let's say if you're voting on an initiative, let's say you're voting on a Green New Deal, or you're voting on Medicare for all. If you had a referendum, you could, and 70% of the people that are eligible to vote came out to vote on it, and the majority of the vote was yes. Guess what? Then you could make the representatives accountable and say, you're going to get this done. And we could every step of the way we could make our representatives accountable, but because we don't do that, because people are comfortable, as Kelly Carlin, George Carlin's daughter, said to me, they're comfortable saving their own convenient lives, and they stay home and watch reality TV and sports and drink a beer. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but
it's certainly not helping.
No, it's not helping when you don't get out and you say, look, every step of the way you should be making representatives accountable to what is in the best interest of the true majority, which is actual, real participatory democracy. But because people don't want to do that, then we have all these problems, and decades go by and we're still not solving them. So I think, like Thomas Jefferson said something to the extent of every generation should have a revolution. We're long overdue. And I think, based on the signs that I see, the hubris of the 0.01%, who don't seem to be in any hurry to go even beyond a resolution on a Green New Deal. They don't apparently want Medicare for all because it costs too much money, even though over $700 billion is the military budget
Goes
of the
right
year.
to the military, and we also give another, I think, $100 billion to the government of Israel.
Last I heard was 40. Did it get raised?
Oh, 40?
But still, you
Still
know,
a big chunk. That probably pays for their universal health care.
well, I'm sure it does. Even after they're required to buy some of our military too, so that keeps our economy going, that part of the economy going.
Right.
But the insanity of this is the hubris. I really don't think they have a clue, Norm. I really don't think they understand how people are hurting out there. You know, at least 40% of the population doesn't have enough for their basic necessities.
Yeah, or I mean, maybe they do, and they appreciate the power that it makes them feel they have. I mean, you could go that way too.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
but
I hope that's. I mean, I hope it is just them being rich and inbred and aloof, but I think they probably know and don't care.
well, then we've seen from history what happens when that's the case.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of which, let's move on to Venezuela, because these things just keep happening, folks.
And they're not going to stop, which is
No.
why we got to keep the conversation going.
One day it's like, perish the thought, but I mean, it's kind of like it needs to happen here, hopefully without any violence and bloodshed. But as far as revolutions
Totally.
in the past have gone, you don't get that kind of wide sweeping change without it. So it sucks, but
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, so now this is sort of a similar situation, right? We had some election conflict, and our guy that we wanted didn't get elected by the people. So what happened there?
Well, it's a very confusing situation, but which is, I don't know all the details of Maduro's administration, right? But I do understand that he was, well, democratically elected, and I know that some people question that. But I also know Chavez, his elections were heavily monitored, including by the Carter Center, Jimmy Carter's center.
Okay.
And at that time, they saw some of the most organized, democratic, elections that they'd ever monitored.
So
actually,
and so Chavez was the guy who we were sort of conditioned not to like, right?
Right.
Because he was always making fun of George Bush, and
well, he called him the
the
devil,
devil
or whatever.
right to.
And at the UN.
Yeah, and when George Bush Jr. left, he said, "Oh, I'm glad." Something like, "I'm glad the smell of sulfur has left the room," or like, "I can still smell the sulfur
Oh wow!
in the air." And yeah, so
And they tried to kill him. There was an attempted military coup on both he and Maduro, and
Right.
and the Maduro coup actually had a drone bomb.
really,
Yeah.
I wonder who that.
But
came from.
that got kind of in the media blackout as well.
Right.
And Guaido it went to George Washington University. He has 2 degrees from an American university, so he's obviously hooked into people here somehow.
Right.
I'm not going to claim to have any inside information on that, but if you're going to school here, chances are, and even if you're connected to an American oil company or a European oil company,
Or if your
there's-
country just happens to have a shit ton of oil.
yeah, right. I mean, my thing is, what about sovereignty? Right? Because let's say, what if Citgo, which is the National Venezuelan Oil Company, Citgo, what if, and we have stations here, what if they were to say, okay, we found some new oil in Texas, so we're going to go to Texas and demand that
Exactly.
the landowners there give us the price that we want so that we can process that oil ourselves and sell it. Do you think the Texas landowners would say, what about our sovereignty? What about democracy? Right? They would. They'd be up in arms, literally,
Yeah,
probably.
it's-
But somehow, if it's us in Venezuela, it's a different story. Why? Especially when we have a
Exactly.
history of intervention. You can read Naomi Klein's shock doctrine book. I mean, if that isn't enough, I don't know what to say. But if you don't respect their sovereignty, the sovereignty that it's their land, then, and also too the fact that you do have to look. What's interesting also is to look at the racial component in this, because the vast majority of people there are not white, lighter skinned, I should say.
Yeah.
So, and the vast majority of the lighter skinned people are supporting Guaido.
Really?
Yeah, but that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah. Venezuela didn't get the massive influx of German immigrants after World War II that Brazil and Argentina did.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's such a weird thing, and it's this like sort of history repeating itself. But I mean, obviously, if land sovereignty meant anything to these people, the people of Africa would be the richest in the world.
That's right.
For the resources that are under their feet.
That's right.
And unfortunately, that's never come to fruition with colonialism and the monopolies that exist down there on diamonds and
imperialism.
Yeah, all of it.
And it's.
But what you're saying, it kind of about the racial component in this, kind of reminds me of the Rwandan revolution.
Yes.
From whence came the Hotel Rwanda movie, touched on some
in the
of the
90s,
major points of that, where the Belgians favored the lighter-skinned Africans and put them in charge of the darker-skinned Africans. And then when the Belgians left, then the darker-skinned people then started massacring the lighter-skinned people because they had been oppressing them as well. And it's just like, oh.
And the State Department didn't know what to do at that time, so that's why the propaganda then was O.J. Simpson and Bill Clinton's affairs.
Right.
And it worked very well to distract people from not only that issue, but economic things that were going on at the time. So, it's really all about propaganda. You know what I mean? And that's why more and more people are not watching, a lot of mainstream media. And that's not just the United States, that's also in France, it's around the world, because people are not they know that there's missing information. They know it, right?
Yeah, and it just keeps cramping down tighter because, what's the initiative now where they're trying to make it to where criticism of the Israeli government is an act of anti-Semitism and therefore a hate crime? You go to prison for saying, I don't like what the Israeli government is doing to the Palestinians.
Well, look what's happening to Chelsea Manning.
Oh, yeah. Well,
they're
giving her a hard time again, too.
Yeah, because they want Julian Assange. They know that the sooner they can get Julian Assange out of the way. See, the thing about it is that looks to me like, not only the fall of an empire, but desperation to hold on as long as absolutely possible.
It seems
because
to be.
Everything that it seems the establishment is doing is just going to backfire from what I can see. It's only a matter of time. I mean, to think that a yellow vest kind of movement can't happen here and with greater intensity when we have some of the widest, perhaps, wealth inequality gap in the Western world right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we could easily have a trigger event here that could bring yellow vest or some other kind of movement very quickly.
Well, I think, and it's hard to imagine that this isn't the case with the sort of inventors of the, false flag operation, from the high seas armadas of yester-century coming from Europe. But it seems to me that they don't utilize that as much as we do here. Like, we have mass shootings here whenever something happens, and thoughts and prayers. Well, there was also a report that the Pentagon lost $5 trillion.
Well, there's actually
all this
probably
stuff
more
happened.
like $21+ trillion. That's
just this year.
No, this probably goes all the way back to the start of all this mess and after 9/11.
Yeah.
But there's bits here, there's trillions here, trillions there, and it's not just the Department of Defense. It's Social Security Administration. It can be anywhere, right? Where money can be taken out of the budget, and this is tax money, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that comes out of our paychecks, that we pay, and it's not accounted for. Somebody's got it somewhere, but somehow the paper trail is gone,
Right.
and this is not classified information. This is non-classified information. So
yeah, it's either right out there right now, or the things like this that have happened in the past are very easily traceable through documents that are available from the Freedom of Information Act
Yeah,
that have
that's
been
right.
requested
That's
over
right.
time.
And that's why David DeGraw is doing research like that right now. He's an investigative journalist. He's the guy that did the investigative journalism of the corruption of Wall Street that ended up in Adbusters helping him and others
Right.
create the Occupy Wall Street movement. So now that's what he's now looking at, this 21 trillion plus. And trying to figure out where all that is, or where that could be, or at least exposing it.
Godspeed, fella. Don't get yourself killed.
Yeah, I know exactly. And but myself, if you're interested, I mean, I did a documentary that's part of the Nowman Show called "The Roots of Society and the Enlightenment of Solutions," and what I did is I took about half of it to talk about to lay out all the many of the problems, the numerous problems that we're facing in our world, and then the second half. The potential solutions, and I included clips, with guests that I've had on my show, Jill Stein and Professor Richard Wolff and Dennis
Yeah.
Kucinich, and
What was the name one more time before we have to close?
Oh, it's called "The Roots of Society and the Enlightenment of Solutions." It's a documentary. You can see it on the Nowman Show on the Arroyo channel. On
YouTube also?
Mm-hmm.
Check it out, you guys. Well, Dan, thank you so much once again
Yeah,
for
thank you.
coming down and
Thank
sharing
you.
all of this with us. You guys stay vigilant. Get yourself a yellow vest. You're probably going to need it soon.
Yeah,
And,
be prepared.
and in the meantime, wherever you're going, get there safe. Bye.